Good morning. Good morning, YouTube. Yeah, I want to do a quick video. My last two videos were about politics, controversial subjects. They got very little juice or very little heat on the internet. I don't think, which I think is indicative. I did some videos on Ron Paul about 6 months ago, and one of them was 550 views. So there's no heat for these guys, none that I can see. People are going to walk in there, put their hand over their mouth and vote, or whatever. They're not excited. That's what I see. Could be right, could be wrong. But let's move on. I saw a video with Dr. Marc Faber and Jim Rogers on CNBC, well, at least on my YouTube channel. I think it was on the Jim Rogers channel. And these guys are both really sharp guys, but they are different in one huge respect. One of them is a great trader, Dr. Faber, or Marc Faber, and the other says that he's the worst trader in the world. That's his own quote. He says he's not, and I don't believe him. I think he's a really smart guy. I think he can do anything he wanted to, but I think he's making a point. He knows who he is. I think Mr. Rogers is the richer one of the two. Mr. Rogers was with Soros at a fund, I think it was the Quantum Fund. They worked together at the Quantum Fund when they were both in their 40s or 50s. Both of them are in Asia now, and they're both real smart. But my point being, you have trading and you have investing. And a lot of people would think they're the same. They're not the same. In general, a trader is someone who is looking at a short period of time, and an investor is looking for a longer period of time. That's a general statement. It's not always true, but it's true most of the time. In general, a trader looks at technical analysis. In general, an investor looks at fundamental analysis. And to quote John Bollinger, the inventor of the Bollinger Band, he said it on CNBC. No. He said it in his book, Bollinger on Bollinger Bands. A fundamentalist thinks he's always right. The technician thinks the market's always right. Now that is a very, very strong statement, so let me clarify it a little bit. So in other words, the fundamentalist looks at the value of a company from terms of dividends they're paying, their profits and loss. One of my buddies I used to live with in San Diego would always talk about cash flow, how much cash they have. Those types of things are fundamental analysis. So in other words, he or she is looking at all those things of reality, quote reality, of solid things you can put your hands on. And he or she makes his decision based on fundamental facts of the situation. For instance, China has a huge population. China has a long history. China is been inactive and away from the rest of us for thousands of years, and they're due for a big change. That would be a fundamental analysis. Where Dr. Faber was talking at the beginning of his talk about how the Chinese market had been 5 years and it was essentially flat. So what Dr. Faber was saying at the beginning of the video was that the market has stayed flat for 5 years while the U.S. market has done well. I think that's what he said. But the point's the same. The fundamentalist looks at fundamental things where the technician says the market's right. And he wants to invest in a manner where he's going to be on the right side of the trade. Now, if you're smart, unless you're what Al Shear, my buddy who trained me in life insurance, said, called me numbnuts when I was doing something stupid. He never called me numbnuts, but he said a lot of numbnuts. So in other words, you could kick somebody in that place and they wouldn't even feel it. That's how dumb they are. Unless you're that dumb, you're going to always know about the other, because both of them will pay tribute to the others, and both of them will talk about the other ones. They may give tribute. If they're making an argument, I'm sure Dr. Rogers would say, or Mr. Rogers would say, this is what the technicians are doing. And Dr. Faber is definitely a great fundamentalist, whatever you want to call it. He can do anything. He's on another planet. He's so smart. I mean, he's smart. He will break down the situation. I mean, his whole gloom, boom, and doom is just very powerful idea. It's very much historical analysis. So both of them are to be respected, and they're both good ways to get to the center of the apple. Because at the core, they agree. You know, they just peel at the apple differently. I just think that there's somebody that you need to study, that you need to look into both of them and watch them. As far as you yourself, what you can take from this, I will close with what Mr. Bollinger, somewhat I already alluded to, who's a great teacher of mine. I talked to Mr. Bollinger on the phone 12, 13 years ago. I called him. I was a subscriber. I spent at least $1,000 on his products. I bought a video from him. I invested in his newsletter. I read his newsletter. I was on his website. So I paid for him. So I really liked him. I saw him on CNBC. But he says, before you invest, you need to do 4 things. The first thing you need to do is you need to understand yourself. Then you need to understand the markets. Then you need to put a plan together to execute that 2 things, knowing those 2 things. And then lastly, you need to execute the plan. So you need to understand, if you don't have a lot of tolerance for risk, if you get up in the morning and your stock dropped and you lost half your money, then you need to be an investor. If you're one of these people like me who doesn't trust anybody and who doesn't believe in things, and I like to be a trader. I don't like people doing my stuff. I like to have my own opinion. I am an egotistic person. I'm narcissistic. So I'm more of a trader. Even though I might say that I believe in fun, I think the trader is deeply psychological, and it's very, it's almost cryptic. It appeals to me as a person. So that's why I preferred to be a trader. So that's me. And I'm really not in the market, hadn't been in the market for years, but I've always watched the market, and I enjoy it. It's like sports to me. So anyway, I wanted to lighten it up. A lot of my stuff had been really serious and controversial. This might be controversial, but I think if you listen to me and you research these gentlemen, you'll learn something and your life will be better. Thank you.